Section 2.1, Solving One-Step Equations. Please fill out the study guide as we go through these notes. Review question number 1. Circle the multiplicative inverse of 1/2. Underline the additive inverse of 1/2. The multiplicative inverse is the reciprocal. So the reciprocal of 1/2 is 2. The additive inverse is the opposite. The opposite of 1/2 is negative 1/2. The multiplicative inverse of negative 3 is negative 1/3. The additive inverse of negative 3 is positive 3. Isolate. The main idea is to isolate a variable in an equation means you get the variable with a coefficient of 1 alone on one side of the equation. In other words, we're trying to get x by itself on one side of the equation. A very ill patient was placed in isolation away from other patients. So that patient was alone. In order to isolate a variable, you may need to perform mathematical operations. So we're going to get the variable by itself. A person living on a small island felt isolated from the rest of the world. He felt alone. Circle the equations that show the variable isolated. The first one, the x has a 4 and a 1 on the same side of the equation, so it is not isolated. Here, the x is isolated because there's nothing else on the left side of the equation. The x is alone. For this problem, the x has a 3 that is being divided, so it is not isolated. And finally, 2/5 equals x. The x is isolated because it's all by itself on the right side. Next, we're going to talk about the addition and subtraction properties of equality. The addition property of equality says you can add the same thing, you can add anything you want to the equation as long as you add it to both sides. So here, if we add c to the left side, we also need to add c to the right side. In this example, they've added 7 to the left side, so that means we need to add 7 to the right side. The subtraction property of equality works the same way. You can subtract anything you want as long as you subtract it from both sides of the equation. So if we subtract c on the left side, we need to subtract c on the right side. And here, if we're going to isolate the n, that means we'll need to subtract 8 from the left side, so that 8 minus 8 is 0. Then we'll also need to subtract 8 from the right side to keep our equation balanced. Number 6, underline the correct word to complete each sentence. The equation y plus 2 equals negative 6 shows addition because we're adding y and 2. The inverse operation of addition is subtraction. Use the justifications to solve the problem. The original equation is y plus 2 equals negative 6. We want to isolate the y. We've already got a 2, so that means we need to subtract a 2 from both sides of the equation. 2 minus 2 is 0, so that leaves us with y on the left side. Negative 6 minus 2 is negative 8. Here's an alternate way to show your work. Y plus 2 equals negative 6. If you'd like to, you can write minus 2 underneath both sides of the equation. And that shows that the 2 and the negative 2 equal 0. And you end up with y equals negative 8. Same solution, just a different way to show your work. Number 8, check your answer by substituting it into the original equation for y and then simplify. So our answer was negative 8. If we substitute negative 8 for y, negative 8 plus 2 is equal to negative 6. So our answer is right. The multiplication and division properties of equality are sort of the same idea. If we're going to multiply one side of the equation by c, then we need to multiply the other side of the equation by c. In this example, if we multiply the left side of the equation by 5, then we need to multiply the right side of the equation by 5. For the division property of equality, you can divide whatever you want to the equation. You just have to make sure you divide both sides. So on the left side, if we're dividing by c, then that means on the right side we need to divide by c. Here we're dividing by 6 on the left, so we need to divide by 6 on the right. Problem 3, solving an equation using division. 10 equals 15x is our problem. Write a justification for each step. We're starting with the original equation, so for that step you can just write original equation. Next, we're using the division property of equality, and so we're dividing both sides by 15. And then we simplify. (10 over 15) simplifies to 2/3 because 5 goes into 10 twice and 5 goes into 15 3 times. And then here the 15 over 15 is just equal to 1, so you end up with x, and x is isolated. When you check your answer, 15 times 2/3 is equal to 10. Here's the fraction work. 15 times 2 over 3 is equal to 30 over 3, which is 10. Remember, with fractions, you just multiply straight across. You don't have to find common denominators. Problem 4, 19 equals r over 3. Underline the correct word or number to complete the sentence. To isolate the variable, you should multiply each side of the equation by 3. That's because there's a 3 in the denominator right here. So if we multiply by 3 on both sides, these 3's will cancel out and you'll have the r isolated. When you isolate the variable, you obtain r equals, well, 3 times 19 is 57. Problem 5, 12 equals 3/4 x. To solve the equation, you should multiply both sides of the equation by the reciprocal of 3/4. The reciprocal of 3/4 is 4/3. Reciprocal means you turn it upside down, so that's 4 over 3. Use the reciprocal of 3/4 to solve the equation. If we start out with 12 equals 3/4 x, then we will multiply by 4/3 on the right side and by 4/3 on the left side. If it helps you, you can put the 12 over a 1 so that you can see how those fractions multiply straight across. 4 times 12 is 48, and 3 times 1 is 3. 4 times 3 is 12, and 3 times 4 is 12, so all of this equals 1. So you end up with just 1 x on the right side, it's isolated, and then finally 48 over 3 is equal to 16, and so 16 equals x. Now check your answer. 3/4 times 16, is that equal to 12? Check it over here. 3/4 times 16 over 1 is going to be 48 over 4, which is 12. So it works. Sorry about that. There we go. Now we've got the page. Problem number 6. An online DVD rental company offers gift certificates that you can use to purchase rental plans. You have a gift certificate for $30. The plan you select costs $5 per month. How many months can you purchase with the gift certificates? Complete the model to solve the problem. We're going to begin by letting M be the number of months that you can purchase. And so then we're going to write 5 times M equals 30. And that's because it's $5 per month and we have $30. Now we solve this equation. 5M equals 30. We need to isolate the M, so divide both sides by 5. And M is equal to 6, so 6 months. What operation does the equation 3 plus x equals negative 34 show? It shows addition because right here we have 3 plus x. Which property of equality would you use to solve it? You would use the subtraction property of equality. And you're going to, in order to use that, you would subtract 3 from both sides of the equation. Please make a note on your paper if you have any questions so that you can ask me in class tomorrow.